2300 hours. Deepwater holding point. International waters. The nuclear submarine hangs suspended in the absolute blackness of the abyss. The ocean presses against the steel hull with crushing weight. Inside the vessel, the air hums with the low vibration of the reactor. Red tactical lights bathe the narrow corridor. Sailors monitor sonar screens that show nothing but empty water. The airlock cycles. A heavy steel wheel spins. The hatch groans open. The smell of ozone is replaced by the scent of brine and damp rubber. 6 figures in black wetsuits stand ready. They check the pressure gauges on their chests. The team leader signals. They step into the flooded dry deck shelter. The freezing water engulfs them immediately. They pull themselves along the guide rails. A black, cigar-shaped mini-sub sits clamped to the deck. The SEALs haul heavy waterproof cases toward the vehicle. They struggle against the density of the water. One diver slams a demolition charge into the cargo bay. He locks the latch. It clicks. The men slide into the open fuselage of the mini-sub. The space is tight. They jam their legs into the footwells. They plug their communication cables into the dashboard. The pilot flips a row of toggle switches. Green lights blink on. The electric motor whines. Inside the main submarine, the captain watches a green dot separate on the screen. He orders the ship to hold steady. The clamps release. The mini-sub drops away from the mothership. Its propeller bites into the water. The small vessel accelerates into the darkness, leaving a faint trail of disturbed bubbles. 2345 hours. Continental shelf approach. The ocean is a void of absolute ink. No sunlight penetrates this depth. The water temperature hovers just above freezing. The swimmer delivery vehicle cuts through the blackness like a silent phantom. Inside the flooded fuselage, the cold bites through thick neoprene suits. The only sound is the rhythmic hiss of rebreathers. The 6 men sit compressed in the narrow steel tube, knees locked against chests. Condensation fogs the viewing ports. The pilot taps the glowing navigation screen. A jagged green line depicts the underwater canyon ahead. He grips the yoke. The craft banks hard to the left. The hull vibrates as it fights a strong cross-current. A diver in the rear seat checks his oxygen sensors. He rotates a valve. The gas mixture hisses. The navigator points to a sonar shadow on the display. It is a ridge. The pilot cuts the engine power. The propeller slows. The vehicle drifts over the jagged rocks on pure momentum to silence its acoustic signature. They sink into the valley on the other side. The target zone lies 2 kilometers ahead. The point man draws his underwater pistol. He checks the chamber. 0:30 hours. Seabed. Hostile littoral zone. The darkness is absolute. The ocean floor is a moonscape of gray silt and jagged rock. The pressure weighs down on the hull with crushing force. Silt particles hang suspended in the water column, caught in the faint green glow of the instrument panel. The silence is heavy, broken only by the electric whine of the thruster. The pilot freezes. He stares at the passive sonar display. A rhythmic pulse spikes on the screen. It is faint, but consistent. A magnetic anomaly blocks the path. The pilot kills the engine immediately. The propeller stops spinning. The vehicle drifts to a halt, hovering 3 meters above the sand. Momentum carries it forward slightly. Then it settles. The team leader taps the shoulder of the lead diver. He signals. Deploy. The canopy slides back. Water swirls violently into the cockpit. 2 divers unbuckle their restraints. They kick upward, leaving the safety of the vehicle. Their fins churn the stagnant water. They hold handheld sensors in front of them. The devices emit a soft vibration. A thin wire mesh stretches across the canyon floor. It is anchored to heavy concrete blocks. Metal spheres float at intervals along the line. Magnetic triggers. The point man swims closer. He moves with agonizing slowness. He controls his buoyancy perfectly. He extends a neutralizing probe. He clamps it onto the wire. The device hums. The magnetic field stabilizes. He waves his glow stick once. The pilot engages the thrusters. The engine purrs. The SDV creeps forward. The hull passes inches over the trigger wire. The metal belly of the sub barely clears the floating sensors. The prop wash stirs up a cloud of mud, burying the wire again. The vehicle clears the barrier. The divers grab the handrails and pull themselves back into the cockpit. The canopy locks down. 01:15 hours. Target ravine, 150 feet depth. The SDV descends into a craggy trench. The water here is turbulent. Strong currents rip through the narrow gap in the rocks. The sediment swirls like a blizzard in the headlights. The pilot fights the controls. The thrusters fire in short, aggressive bursts to counter the drift. The vehicle sways violently. The hull scrapes against a rock wall. Metal screeches against stone. The sound cuts through the water. The pilot corrects hard. The skids impact the seabed. Dust explodes outward. The sub settles. The canopy unlatches. The team leader shoves the hatch open. The current slams into the cockpit. The seals kick out of the fuselage. The moving water grabs their tanks and twists their bodies. They grip the jagged rock face to anchor themselves. Two divers haul the heavy demolition cases from the cargo bay. The weight pulls them down. They sink into the soft silt up to their knees. Mud billows up, blinding them completely. They switch on tactical lights. White beams cut through the murk. The lead diver checks his compass. He points north. The team trudges forward, leaning their bodies against the flow of the water. 01:30 hours. Deep ocean trench, Sector 4. The world is reduced to the 3-foot beam of a tactical light. Suspended sediment creates a dense, swirling fog that reflects the glare back into the diver's eyes. The silence is absolute, save for the rhythmic, mechanical hiss of the rebreathers and the muffled thud of hearts beating against neoprene. The water pressure wraps around them like a vice, compressing suits and slowing movements. The team moves in a phantom phalanx, fins kicking gently to maintain position against the dragging current. The point man drifts just inches above the gray silt. He holds the magnetometer with both hands. His eyes lock onto the small glowing screen. The green line remains flat. He sweeps the device left, then right. Nothing. He kicks forward. The landscape is monotonous. Endless dunes of gray mud and dead coral. The device chirps. It is a sharp electronic spike that cuts through the water. The point man freezes. He hovers perfectly still. He sweeps the sensor back over the previous spot. The pitch rises. The screen flashes red. He raises a clenched fist. The signal ripples down the line. The team halts immediately, their bodies hanging in the void. The leader swims to the front. He points at the seabed. The sand looks undisturbed, identical to the miles of ocean floor behind them. He unclips a folding shovel from his belt. He snaps the blade open. He drives the metal into the sediment. The shovel strikes something solid. A dull, metallic clang vibrates through the water. The leader signals. 3 divers descend. They land on their knees in the soft mud. They begin to dig. Hands claw at the heavy, wet sand. They scoop it away in aggressive bursts. The silt explodes upward, blinding them, turning the water into chocolate milk. They work by touch alone. They rip away chunks of ancient debris and rock. The water clears slightly. A shape emerges from the gloom. It is black, cylindrical, and massive. The cable is thicker than a man's torso. Layers of barnacles and rusted concretions encrust the surface. Underneath the marine growth, the armored steel mesh glints in the flashlight beam. It stretches endlessly into the dark in both directions. The team leader runs a gloved hand over the cold metal. He taps it with his knife. It is the main trunk, the data artery connecting the continent. He turns to the demolition specialist. He slices his hand across his throat. 01:45 hours. Communications junction Alpha. The silt settles into a thin gray dusting over the exposed armor of the cable. The demolition specialist kneels in the mud. He unbuckles the heavy transport case. The lid floats open. He reaches inside and grips the hydraulic cutting charge. It is a dense, U-shaped block of steel and high explosives. He shoves the device over the thick cable. The metal clanks against the barnacles. He twists the locking bolt. The teeth of the clamp bite into the outer sheath. He gives it a violent shake. It holds solid. The second diver unspools the detonator cord. He plugs the connector into the charge. He zip-ties the wire to the main line. His fingers move with practiced speed. He sets the digital timer. The red LED flares to life. Numbers begin to count down. The water suddenly vibrates. It starts as a low-frequency thrum in the chest. It grows rapidly. The water pressure fluctuates. A deep, mechanical grinding noise hammers down from the surface. It is the sound of heavy screws churning water. The team leader snaps his head up. He looks toward the surface. The black void above is no longer empty. A cone of white light cuts through the darkness. It sweeps back and forth, stabbing into the depths. The hum becomes a roar. The turbulence shakes the divers where they kneel. 01:55 hours. Seabed engagement zone. The spotlight burns through the water. It sweeps across the ocean floor, illuminating the silt clouds in blinding white. The hum turns into a high-pitched whine. A yellow shape drops out of the darkness above. It is a remote-operated vehicle. Its thrusters kick up sand as it hovers 5 meters off the bottom. The camera lens rotates. It locks onto the SEAL team. The mechanical claw snaps open. The team leader raises his underwater rifle. He squeezes the trigger. The weapon kicks against his shoulder. A supercavitating dart streaks through the water. It impacts the ROV's glass dome. The lens shatters. The machine spasms. Sparks erupt from the battery housing, flashing blue in the gloom. The ROV tilts and spirals into the mud. The reprieve is short. Dark shapes plummet from the surface. Enemy combat divers descend rapidly on weighted sleds. They release their tow lines and glide toward the bottom. They wear gray camouflage wetsuits and carry long pneumatic spear guns. The water erupts into chaos. The lead enemy diver fires. A steel spear tears through the water. It misses the demolition specialist by inches and buries itself in the sediment. A SEAL returns fire. The dart punches through the enemy's chest rig. A plume of dark, ink-like fluid explodes into the water. The diver goes limp. His regulator falls from his mouth. A second enemy slams into the point man. The impact knocks the wind out of him. They tumble into the silt. The enemy grabs the SEAL's face mask. He yanks violently. The strap snaps. The mask floods. The SEAL is blind. He thrashes. He drives his knee into the enemy's stomach. He draws his combat knife. He strikes blindly. The blade sinks into rubber and flesh. The enemy convulses and floats away. The water churns with violence. Bubbles from severed hoses rise in thick columns. Movements are slow, dreamlike, but deadly. A SEAL grabs an enemy's air hose. He slices it with his blade. High-pressure air explodes outward. The enemy panics. He claws at his throat. The team leader fires his last dart. It hits a descending diver in the thigh. The man screams, a muffled, gurgling sound that vibrates through the water. He drops his weapon. The ocean floor is a tangle of bodies, silt, and blood. 02:05 hours. Demolition site. The immediate violence ceases. 3 gray-clad bodies drift listlessly in the current, their air hoses trailing like severed intestines. A cloud of black blood expands slowly, mixing with the suspended silt. The team leader looks at the explosive charge clamped to the cable. The red LED counts down. 5 minutes. He flashes his tactical light twice. Move. The SEALs kick violently off the seabed. They leave the dead where they float. They abandon the heavy transport cases. They swim hard toward the dark ravine. Their fins chop the water. Above them, the surface resembles a ceiling of fire. Dozens of searchlights pierce the depths. The beams cross and slash through the gloom. A new sound hammers the water. Ping, ping, ping. Active sonar. It is loud enough to be felt in the teeth. The enemy knows they are there. The team reaches the rocky hiding spot of the delivery vehicle. The pilot dives into the cockpit. He smashes his knees against the console. The rest of the team scrambles into the fuselage. It is a desperate, clumsy pile of limbs and tanks. The rear gunner hauls the point man into the bay. He shoves a backup regulator into the man's mouth. He slams the canopy shut. He twists the locking wheel. The seal engages. The pilot flips the master breaker. The electric engine whines to life. The vehicle lifts off the rock, stirring up a final cloud of dust. 0210 hours. The kill zone. Sector 4. The digital timer on the hydraulic charge flashes to 0. The circuit closes. The detonator fires. A sphere of superheated gas expands instantly at the bottom of the trench. The water cannot compress. It shatters. The explosion rips through the crushing depth with the force of a freight train. The heavy armored cable snaps like a dry twig. The thick steel sheathing shears apart. The copper core vaporizes in a flash of white heat. The severed ends of the trunk line whip backward violently. They smash into the rock walls of the canyon, pulverizing centuries of coral growth. A massive bubble of gas pulses outward. It collapses and expands again, sending a second hammer blow of pressure through the ravine. The seabed lifts. Tons of gray silt, rock, and debris blast upward in a dense, blinding column. The shockwave travels faster than sound. It tears the barnacles off the surrounding rocks. It kills every living thing within a 100-meter radius instantly. The concussion wave overtakes the fleeing mini-sub. It hits the vehicle from behind. The impact is physical and brutal. The SDV bucks wildly, pitching nose down into the darkness. The propeller cavitates and loses its grip on the water. The hull groans under the stress. Metal seams screech as the frame twists. Inside the flooded fuselage, the world spins. The pilot slams forward against his harness. His helmet cracks against the polycarbonate console. The navigation screen flickers and dies. In the rear compartment, the seals are thrown like ragdolls against the steel ribs of the sub. A loose oxygen tank tears free from its strap. It flies across the narrow space. It smashes into a diver's shoulder. Bone snaps. The diver screams, a sound swallowed immediately by the water and the roar of turbulence. The vehicle enters a violent roll. It tumbles through the abyss, caught in the hydraulic wake of the blast. The pilot fights the yoke. His hands shake. Blood leaks from a cut on his forehead, clouding his vision. He jams the throttle to 0 to stop the spin. The sub shudders and stalls. He waits a heartbeat. He slams the throttle forward. The electric motor whines in protest. The propeller bites into the churning water. The craft levels out. On the surface above, the ocean bulges. A dome of white water rises 20 feet into the air. It hangs for a second, an unnatural boil on the dark sea, before collapsing into a churning cauldron of foam and dead fish. The vibrations rattle the hulls of the hunting destroyers. Back on the bottom, the dust cloud swallows the site of the detonation. The massive cable lies in ruin, the ends twisted and buried under a landslide of mud. The data connection to the mainland is dead. 02. 15 hours. Surface zone above the rupture point. The ocean's surface is a chaotic froth of white foam and debris. The destroyer turns hard to starboard. The hull lists heavily. The wake churns the black water into a frenzy. On the aft deck, the tempo is frantic. Sailors in flash gear sprint across the slippery steel. The tactical officer screams orders over the wind. He slams the release lever. The racks unlock. Heavy barrel-sized depth charges roll down the steel rails. They drop off the stern. Splash, splash, splash. They disappear into the wake. Forward of the bridge, the anti-submarine rocket launchers swivel. The turrets lock onto the sonar returns. The tubes elevate. A salvo erupts. Whoosh. Rockets streak into the night sky, trailing bright orange exhaust. They arc over the water and plunge into the sea in a tight kill pattern. Deep below, the silence is shattered. The charges reach their set depth. The hydrostatic fuses click. The ocean detonates. A chain of explosions rips through the water column. Massive bubbles of high-pressure gas expand and collapse. The shock waves overlap. They create a wall of concussion, moving at the speed of sound. The blast wave catches the escaping SDV. It hammers the small vessel from above. The impact is violent and immediate. The mini-sub is slapped downward, as if hit by a giant hand. The hull shudders violently. Rivets pop. Inside the cockpit, a high-pressure hydraulic line bursts. Fluid sprays across the pilot's visor. He wipes it frantically. The control yoke jerks out of his hands. The sub enters a nosedive. The depth gauge spins rapidly. Another charge explodes. Closer. The viewport fractures. A spiderweb crack appears in the thick polycarbonate. It grows with an audible crack. Water begins to weep through the fissure. The hull groans under the assault. The lights flicker and die, plunging the team into total darkness. The only sound is the roar of the ocean tearing itself apart, and the terrified whine of the over-revving propeller. 0230 hours. Submarine Canyon, Sector 5. The darkness inside the swimmer delivery vehicle is total. The only illumination comes from the sparks spitting from the fried console wiring. The vessel plummets toward the abyss. The depth gauge needle spins past safety limits. The pressure hull creaks, a sound like metal teeth grinding together. The pilot fumbles in the dark. His hand finds the emergency ballast lever. He yanks it back. Compressed air hisses violently into the trim tanks. The buoyancy shifts. The SDV shudders. The nose lifts sluggishly. The descent slows. A red emergency light flickers on. It bathes the cramped interior in a bloody glow. The pilot grips the yoke. He jams the throttle forward. The engine whines, struggling against the water resistance. The sub levels out, hovering just 50 feet above the jagged canyon floor. Ping! The active sonar strikes the hull. It is deafening. It vibrates the diver's teeth. The destroyer is directly overhead. The pilot banks hard right. He steers the crippled craft toward the canyon wall. He drives the sub into the shadow of the cliff. The hull scrapes against the granite face. Screeching metal echoes through the water. He ignores it. He pushes the vehicle closer to the rock. Above, the destroyer's propellers churn the water like a giant blender. The sound is a rhythmic, thundering beat that grows louder with every second. The surface ship hunts for a return signal. The pilot cuts the engine speed. He reduces the RPMs to a crawl. The SDV glides silently along the cliff face. The rock wall acts as a shield, scattering the sonar waves. The ping returns, but it is muffled. The destroyer passes overhead. The noise of its screws fades slightly as it moves south. Suddenly, a depth charge tumbles down the cliff face. It bounces off a rock ledge. It detonates below them. The shockwave rushes up the canyon wall. It slams into the SDV from below. The vehicle bucks violently. The pilot's head snaps back against the headrest. The cracked viewport hisses. A jet of high-pressure water sprays into the cockpit. It hits the pilot in the chest. He gasps. He keeps one hand on the yoke and jams his other gloved hand against the leaking glass. He holds it there. The pressure pushes against his palm. He checks the compass. Northwest. The escape vector. He gently nudges the throttle forward. The sub limps along the wall, hiding in the noise and the debris, moving inch by inch away from the kill zone. 0300 hours. Deep water rendezvous point. The ocean is quiet here. The thunder of the depth charges is a distant, dull thud, miles to the east. The swimmer delivery vehicle limps through the black water. The engine emits a sickly, grinding noise. The battery indicator flashes red. Power is critical. Inside the fuselage, the air is stale. Carbon dioxide levels rise. The divers breathe shallowly. The pilot wipes blood from his eyes. He stares into the void. A faint, rhythmic pulse appears in the distance. A strobe light. Blue. Flash. Pause. Flash. The mother submarine materializes out of the gloom. It is a massive steel leviathan, hanging suspended and motionless in the current. It dwarfs the battered mini-sub. The pilot adjusts his approach. He fights the sluggish controls. The SDV drifts over the top of the submarine's hull. The docking cradle waits. A steel saddle bolted to the deck. The current pushes the mini-sub sideways. The pilot corrects. He drops the altitude. Metal shrieks against metal. The skids impact the guide rails. The SDV slides forward. It hits the stop bar with a heavy clang. Hydraulic clamps shoot out from the cradle. They bite into the SDV's hull. They lock tight. The connection is solid. The dry deck shelter hatch beneath them grinds open. The mini-sub is swallowed by the larger vessel. The outer hangar door slides shut. Seals inflate. High-powered pumps roar to life. The water level in the shelter drops rapidly. The pressure equalizes. Air hisses into the chamber. The SDV canopy pops open. The seals spill out onto the wet, non-slip deck. They are exhausted. They drag their gear and the injured diver. The watertight door to the main submarine spins open. Yellow light floods the wet bay. Corpsmen rush in. They grab the injured man. They pull him onto a stretcher. The team leader hands the mission drive to the waiting captain. He leans against the bulkhead. He slides down to the floor. The captain speaks into the intercom. Dive! 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 The nuclear submarine tilts its nose down. The ballast tanks flood. The propulsors spin up. The vessel descends rapidly, slipping into the thermal layers of the deep abyss, vanishing from the world.